Napoleon was responsible for Europe's first modern legal code in 1804, known as the Napoleonic Code. Due to Napoleon's conquest, he was able to spread the code throughout Europe. During and after his reign, the code would be adopted by almost every European state. Later on, it would even influence other countries throughout the world. It is considered one of the world's few documents that influence almost every nation in some way, making laws clearer and more accessible for everyone. It set strict laws on paper that everyone had to follow regardless of class or wealth. It also removed royals' ability to make any laws on the spot or change laws whenever they desired. These changes gave more people more freedoms and liberties and put people on more of a common footing in society. However, it did completely take away all women's rights that had been earned prior during the revolution. It also strengthens men as the head of the household and had complete legal control over their families. Napoleon's reign came at a time when France's economy was in disaster and not modernized. He worked to change this by forming a national French bank in 1800. This allowed for more investment into France's economy, both domestic and abroad. This shift allowed France to assert itself as an economic power. He also modernized the tax system and made it fair for the lower classes. He did sweep away the old guilds and monopolies that formerly were integral into France's economy and ended trade restrictions. He introduced the metric system, which made it easier for a lot of people to standardize things. He would limit trade through the continental system, which is the European mainland boycott of England. He also introduced much new wealth from his international conquests and put almost every man to work in either in the army or helping the army run in some way.
Napoleon had a significant impact on the culture of Europe during his rule. One aspect of Napoleon's rule that made him unique from other conquerors was embracing his Enlightenment origins. With these ideals in mind, Napoleon also sought to heighten not just himself, but France's culture entirely. Embracing the idea that gave him an opportunity to rise to the ranks, Napoleon maintained that a man's place in society should be determined by his talents and not by his status of birth. With the Napoleonic Code, he made all men equal in the eyes of the law. He also reformed the education system in France and heavily endorsed the arts, bringing back a culture of patronage in the upper classes of Europe. His conquests through Italy and Egypt also introduced the full glory of the ancient empires, and brought with him new styles of clothing and goods to Europe. Napoleon proved his brilliant political nature as well as he was able to capture, annex many countries, and rule as an emperor while maintaining his popularity within revolutionist France. Furthering his power, Napoleon placed his family members to rule over territories he had either annexed or conquered in attempts to establish a family dynasty. By enacting the Napoleonic Code and naming himself emperor over both France and his satellite kingdoms, Napoleon further increased his power as an absolute ruler. However, ultimately, the magnitude of his power led to his demise, as a coalition formed by almost every major power in Europe saw him as an extreme threat and put their differences aside to band together and defeat him.
Napoleon helped to spread the ideas of the French Revolution and the Enlightenment throughout Europe. First off, he got rid of despots in places such as Spain, the Netherlands, and the Holy Roman Empire. And in place of them, he put family members in power and was able to give more power to the people rather than the traditional monarchies of these nations. He also helped to unify Germany through the creation of the Confederation of the Rhine in place of the former Holy Roman Empire. Although this dissolved after his defeats at Leipzig and Waterloo, it helped the German states realize that they had to be unified in order to compete with stronger nations, such as France was under Napoleon. He also indirectly caused the abolition of serfdom throughout Eastern Europe, including in Prussia, where they abolished serfdom because they saw it as the reason they could not defend the attacks of Napoleon's troops.
Napoleon's religious policies stemmed from the motto authority from above, confidence from below. In the Concordat, Napoleon was able to outline France's new direction. The Concordat reestablished the relationship between the Catholic Church and France. With the Concordat, Napoleon was able to elect the religious leaders he wanted and keep their corruption out of France. Also, they were able to nationalize church property and sell it. Overall, Napoleon made a positive reform, creating more religious toleration, whereas the past governments had persecuted Catholics and others. Napoleon became known as a military genius during his campaign in Italy when he forced Austria to surrender with the Treaty of Campo Formio. Napoleon was a pioneer of artillery, which was a new form of military strategy at the time. He defeated Austria and Russia in Austerlitz, then the Prussians in the next year, and then the Russians again the year after that. All of these triumphs were marked by treaties of Tilsit, where he had conquered most of mainland Europe by then. Overall, Napoleon was a true man of the Enlightenment as he defeated despots of the past and was able to put Europe in a new direction based on the general will and natural liberties. Although Napoleon had a tough nature and at times overextended his power, he did what was in the best interest of Western Europe. He made efforts in religious toleration, created a new bank and taxing system, was one of the greatest military minds ever, had amicable diplomatic relations with his client and neighboring states, created codes that were littered with Enlightenment beliefs, and attempted to free Western Europe of the tyrannical reign of other rulers.